Good morning and welcome to First Parish Kingston. You may have noticed an addition to our meeting house this morning, so I have a brief announcement. You may have noticed that there's an addition to the meeting house decorations this morning. We are collecting scarves, hats, and mittens to include in our renewal house packages for deliveries on December 11th. Please join me in bringing in donations for the tree in the next 2 Sundays. We'll be sending off our gifts from the giving tree and our mittens and scarves and masks off on that Saturday. So thank you. That's the only announcement this morning.
This is the first Sunday that your board has approved singing in service together. So I'm going to invite you to sing together and make some harmony this morning to hear the sound of us joining in community, which we haven't been able to do in that way in a while. But let's begin with some humming. I invite you to just hum along with this one note. Keep going. Use it as a chance to breathe deep. You can add some harmonies if you want. Amen.
Welcome once again. This morning, we're pleased to welcome back Matt Meyer to the meeting house. Matt is a lifelong Unitarian Universalist with a long background as a musician, worship leader for UU congregations across the country. Matt lives in Boston, but travels as a worship leader, bringing good news of Unitarian Universalists to hundreds of congregations all over the country. He serves as Director of Operations for Sanctuary Boston, a contemporary UU worship community with rockin' music and engaging worship. And they also did a wonderful job during COVID with their remote services. Matt is also a founding organizer for the UU Song Leaders Convergence, a gathering of all UUs who love community singing, and share skills, best practices, and of course, songs, in order to build a more musical movement together. Matt's children's story, which was recently published, entitled Desmond Gets Free, was published in 2021 by Skinner House Press. To get a copy for a child or a teacher or any justice maker in your life, check out the link on his website, or you can get a copy after the service in the vestibule of the church. Thank you for being here. Our chalice lighting this morning and opening words, At the River Clarion by Mary Oliver. I don't know who God is exactly, but I'll tell you this. I was sitting in the river named Clarion on the washed splash stone, and all afternoon I listened to the voices of the river talking. Whenever the water struck a stone, it had something to say, and the water itself, and even the mosses trailing under the water. And slowly, very slowly, it became clear to me what they were saying. Said the river, I am part of holiness. And I too, said the stone. And I too, whispered the moss beneath the water. I'd been to the river before, a few times. Don't blame the river for nothing happening quickly. You don't hear such voices in an hour or a day. You don't hear them at all if selfhood has suffered in your ears. And it is difficult to hear anything through all the traffic and the ambition.
I am part of holiness, said the stone, and I too, said the moss in the water. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. 'Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones, it's the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. And try singing that part with me. Put your roots down, put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen again. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. The next part goes like this. 'Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones. Let's try that. 'Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen again. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen, 'cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Sounds good. I invite you to rise in body or spirit. Now, with songs like this, it's not important that we sing exactly the right rhythm and exactly the right way at exactly the right time. What's important is that you sing out like you're singing in the shower. You sing with some gusto And so I'm going to invite you to sing out together, to listen to the sound of the room as we speak of the sound of the water. Here we go. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can what she says if cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Here we go. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen, cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound as the blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Here we go. Put your roots down, feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Cause the sound of the river as it moves across the stones is the same sound, blood in your body as it moves across your bones. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Put your roots down, put your feet on the ground. You can hear what she says if you listen. Oh, it's such a joy listening to you all. Well, I'd love to share this story with you all. Desmond gets free. Now, Desmond the Mouse lived in the most beautiful meadow in all the land. Every morning, Desmond would wake with the sunrise and spend the whole day playing in the middle of that beautiful meadow. And every night, he would go to sleep in the middle of that meadow under the beautiful starry sky. One night, though, Desmond awoke to find that it was still dark out. He tried to roll over, get more comfortable, go back to sleep, but something wasn't right. He could hardly move, and his tail was throbbing with pain. Reaching behind him, he felt that there was some sort of huge boulder that had stuck his tail right to the ground. He tried pushing on this giant rock behind him, and he tried tugging on his tail to get free. And he tried pushing and tugging and tugging and pushing, but it was no use. He was stuck. When he was just about out of breath, though, he saw another animal pass by through the meadow. It was a huge giraffe. And so he called out, "Oh, giraffe, it seems some sort of boulder has landed just on my tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could use your powerful legs to nudge it just a few inches in the other direction, I could go free." The giraffe laughed at Desmond, though, the way giraffes do. "Silly mouse," he said, "that's no boulder that's fallen on your tail. That's an elephant that has fallen asleep on your tail." "Well, that seems like good news," said Desmond. "In that case, if you could just gently wake him up and ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction, I could go free." "I don't know about that," said the giraffe. I mean, surely you know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best to remain neutral in times like this. Well, said Desmond, I do not appreciate your neutrality. The giraffe wandered off, leaving Desmond alone again. So he tried shouting out to wake up the elephant with all of his voice, but his little mouse voice was just too far away from those giant elephant ears at the way other end of that giant elephant body. Again, he tried pushing on the elephant to get loose and tugging on his tail to get free. And he tried shouting and pushing and tugging and tugging and pushing and shouting, but it was no use. And when he had just about given up, he saw a gazelle pass by through the meadow. Good news, he thought. Oh, gazelle, he called out. It seems that an elephant has fallen asleep just on my tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could gently wake him up and ask him to roll over just a few inches in the other direction, I could finally go free. I don't know about that, said the gazelle. You know what they say about letting sleeping elephants lie. I find it's best not to get involved in other animals' business. I find it's best just to stay neutral in times like this. The gazelle wandered off, and Desmond said almost to himself this time, I do not appreciate your neutrality. One last time, Desmond tried shouting with all of his voice, pushing with all of his strength, and tugging with all of his might, and shouting and pushing and tugging and tugging and pushing and shouting, but it was no use. When he had just about given up for the final time, he saw another animal, though, pass through the grass. This time it was a mouse. And when he called out, the mouse ran over and introduced himself. My name is Nelson. What seems to be the problem? No sooner had Desmond explained the situation than Nelson ran as fast as he could all the way to the other end of that giant elephant body. And he shouted out with all of his voice up to those giant elephant ears on top of that giant elephant head, "Excuse me! It seems you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of the meadow. If you could roll over just a few inches in the other direction, he could go free." Well, the elephant heard little Nelson's voice way down on the ground, but he was just a little too far away, and the voice was just a little too quiet, and to be honest, the elephant was just a little too comfortable. He didn't budge. So Nelson ran back to Desmond and he said, I think I might have an idea. Don't move. He ran off, leaving a confused look on Desmond's face. And just when Desmond was starting to get worried again, Nelson came back through the grasses, but he wasn't alone this time. He had found 3 mouse friends, and each of them had found another 3 mouse friends. The whole group of them ran all the way to the other end of that giant elephant body. And one mouse climbed up on the shoulders of another, and another one climbed up on her shoulders. And one by one, till they had a whole mouse ladder all the way up the back of that giant elephant head. And at last, Nelson climbed up and he stood right at the opening of that giant elephant ear. And he said, "Excuse me. It seems you've fallen asleep on my friend's tail in the middle of the meadow. Roll over just a few inches in the other direction so he can go free." Well, this time his voice was just too close and just too loud to ignore. So the elephant said, and it rolled over just a few inches in the other direction. Nelson and his friends climbed back down to the ground and they met up with Desmond, and the whole group of them spent the rest of that day playing in the meadow together. Archbishop Desmond Tutu has said, if you are neutral in situations of injustice, you have already taken sides with the oppressor and with the powerful. If an elephant is standing on the tail of a mouse, he says, that a mouse will never appreciate your neutrality. Desmond Tutu believes in a God that takes sides for the oppressed, for the orphan, for the widow, he says. And as Unitarian Universalists, we have also covenanted to take sides. We've covenanted to imagine a world of justice and equity and compassion, and to build it with our own hands, together in community. And that means taking sides for justice, taking sides for equity and compassion. And it means that we side with love. May it be so. May we make it so together. Holding these joys and sorrows together in community, I invite you to breathe deep, to be fully present here together, where for now, at least, there is nothing else that needs to be done. For now, at least, nowhere else you need to be. I invite you to join in a spirit of prayer. Spirit of love that is within us and between us. Be with us as we are with each other this morning, bringing all of our complicated lives, bringing the burdens weighing us down, that they might be shared and lightened. Bringing the joys, large and small, that lift us up, that they might be magnified in community. Some of us arrive here counting the many blessings of the week behind, looking forward to many joys in the week to come. May we gather in gratitude. Some of us arrive here thinking of loved ones that can't be with us or far away. Some of us struggling with illness or with loss. May we breathe deeply and find a stillness that may have eluded us all week long. Spirit of love, be with us as we are with each other in the all of it, in the griefs and the gratitudes, in the sorrows and the celebrations. May we build this spiritual home together in our words and deeds, in our listening and our loving. Let's join together in a shared silence. Blessed be, and amen.
Now I invite you to share with us your offerings and your gifts. This church was built and sustained by those who receive what they can and give what they're able. May it always be worthy of your gifts for years. It also now allows us to bring wonderful services to the meeting house like this morning's.
Hello, there we go. As we look ahead to the holidays, many of us are thinking of home and what it means to create family, to create a sense of home, to create a place where we are together in peace, where we find grounding and connection. The song speaks to that home more as a people than a place. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves back to the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves back to the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves back to the well. It is time now, and what a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to be in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In this great turning we shall learn to lead in love. In the spirit of making home by hand, in the spirit of crafting a place of grounding and connection together, we offer this reading, an abbreviated list of 250 things every architect should know, written by a professor of architecture at City College of New York, Michael Sorkin.
The feel of cool marble under bare feet.
The modulus of rupture.
The flowering season of azaleas.
How to lay bricks.
Hydrology is destiny.
the color wheel,
what the client wants, what the client thinks it wants, what the client can afford, what the planet can afford.
how the pyramids were built, and why,
The pleasures of the suburbs,
and the horrors,
the quality of light passing through ice,
the meaninglessness of borders,
the reasons for their tenacity,
the smell of concrete after rain, the angle of the sun at the equinox, the depth of the aquifer beneath you,
how to get lost,
the architectural impact of colonialism on the cities of North Africa,
a distaste for imperialism,
the fire code, the seismic code, and the health code,
how to listen closely, who profits,
what to refuse to do even for money,
a bit of chemistry and physics,
what makes you happy,
the acoustical properties of trees and shrubs,
bicycle safety and etiquette,
the acoustic performance of Boston Symphony Hall,
the distance at which you can recognize faces,
your neighbors,
the capacity of wetlands to attenuate storm surges,
the depths of desire,
the heights of folly,
low tide,
the golden and other ratios.
I check, I might have messed up your order.
Okay, thank you. As I'm looking ahead to the holidays and also looking back on this last year and a half, I've been thinking a lot about what it means to be at home. What it means to craft a home with our hands, with our words and deeds, with our listening and our loving. Home is not an unchanging thing, though. Home is something that evolves and changes as we change with it. I have made my home by 3 different rivers over the years. As a child, my extended family spent some time every summer at a little house in Minnesota on the St. Croix River, the border of Wisconsin and Minnesota. We've always called this little cabin the lake house, this cabin of wood and stone. The river of the St. Croix is wide there where the house sits, but it's definitely not a lake. I was practically an adult before I finally noticed this discrepancy. And I remember clearly the day when, as a teenager, I finally asked my mom, "You know that this is a river, right? Why do we call it a lake house?" I learned that day that the geologists tell us that beneath the St. Croix, there is an ancient river. Before it was an ancient lake, that it was a lake long ago before the St. Croix River came along through it. Long ago, like thousands of years ago. How funny to call this home a lake house, named for a thing that hasn't been there in thousands of years, named for a thing that isn't there now, certainly, named for a thing none of us could possibly even remember. Learning of the ancient lake beneath the St. Croix, though, I felt like my mind grew 3 sizes that day. The world was older than I knew. The world was bigger than I knew. And it was more malleable than I could have imagined. Hydrology is destiny, the architects tell us. Hydrology is history also. My great-grandfather built that home, hiring a team of his brothers-in-law and enlisting the help of a pile of children that he put to work day in and day out, carrying stones up from the beach and laying the mortar. They say that the electrical wiring behind the walls in this cabin only went as high as the smallest children could reach, which is a terrifying image. For a child like me, this was an impossibly old cabin, and it may as well have been there since the ancient times when the river was a lake. But something about getting older over the years leaves me feeling closer to my great-grandfather rather than farther from him. And while my heart is warmed by the longevity of this home, sitting there by the river for generation after generation, I'm also heartened to think of a time when the home was only an idea, when big family dinners around the table and fires on the beach were only in my ancestors' imagination. How different things were long ago. This is the lesson of rivers, particularly the waterways where we make our homes and our neighborhoods and our civilizations. They are constant and they are constantly changing. History and destiny. Even the things that seem most permanent are constantly in motion. In March of 2020, as the pandemic came and everything shut down and our lives were rearranged almost overnight, it seemed, I was shocked to find our communities and congregations, corporations, and even Congress moving quickly, taking action to make changes in the world unlike I had ever seen before. For years, as an activist trying to make this world at least a little different, I had been told by my elders that change happens slowly, that it takes time. Part of the pain of the great shutdown of 2020, for me at least, was seeing this lie made so visible. The lesson of rivers, the lesson of handmade homes, should remind us to imagine a world different than the one we inherited. Change is possible, change is inevitable. Things as they are not as they were, and what is not what will be. A sense of home, like the warmth of community, is something we imagine into being, and then something we create by hand together. Oh, river, I hear you, feel you calling me. Oh, river, who will I be when I reach the sea? Oh, river, I hear you, feel you calling me. Oh, river, who will I be when I reach the sea? Those of us in the greater Boston area are familiar, certainly, with the Big Dig. But I come from a region in the Midwest shaped by something called the Big Ditch. I grew up just outside of the city of Chicago, and Chicago grew up at the intersection of Lake Michigan and the Chicago River. In the late 1800s, though, when the Industrial Revolution came and transformed the city, the river became so polluted from the sudden industrialization and the butcher yards. The river became so polluted that when the Great Chicago Fire came, the river itself caught fire. The putrid, awful, polluted waters of the river flowed into Lake Michigan, which was a real problem because Lake Michigan was also the source for the city's drinking water. Eventually, this pollution was so bad that Chicago became known as Typhoid Fever City. This is not a great reputation to have. So the city embarked on this huge project called the Big Ditch. They dug a canal, a giant canal, that reversed the flow of the entire Chicago River. Our river has run backwards ever since. For 130 years now, it has flowed from Lake Michigan rather than feeding it. And this incredible plan worked. It made for a much cleaner city and much healthier people. Growing up near the Chicago River, though, I never knew how different it once was. I knew, of course, that the tall buildings of steel and glass were made by human hands. But I did not understand that the labor of architects and engineers and everyday workers, those same hands shaped the water as well. Things as they are not as they were, and things as they are not what will be. The river had shaped the city as it grew, and then the city in turn shaped the river. At every level, dear ones, we are shaped by our surroundings, just as we, with our own hands, with our imagining, with our listening, and our loving, shape the world around us. Now, you may be wondering, as I did, what happened to all of that waste in the Chicago River once it was headed in the other direction? You probably won't be surprised to learn that the farmers and other folks who all of a sudden overnight found themselves suddenly downstream were not too excited about it. Farmers in Illinois, and then the entire city of St. Louis, and then the entire state of Michigan, each sued the city of Chicago, one after another after another. How perfectly American this plan was, to deal with waste by sending it downstream to someone else. The poet Wendell Berry once summed up the religious traditions of the world in his own environmental way, saying, "Do unto those downstream as you would have those upstream do unto you." The wisdom of architects tells us that borders are meaningless. The wisdom of the rivers confirms it. Rivers are conclusive evidence of the meaninglessness of borders. So is pollution. So are viruses, for that matter. Anyone with a 6th grade science education who's learned the basics of the water cycle knows this truth of our existence, this truth that we all live upstream from each other, and we all live downstream from each other. Water in all of its forms demonstrates the lie that we are separate from one another. It demonstrates the lie that people can set policies that don't affect our neighbors, that lines can be drawn in the sand to divide up the interdependent web of all existence into discrete portions. Why is it that so many of the same people who deny climate change also deny the gravity of a global pandemic? It is because they are both evidence against the ideology of rugged individualism. They are both evidence against the myth of our separateness. It turns out that sending sewage west instead of east is no magic. It is not transfiguration. It is only delay. It is only sickness afar instead of sickness near. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. When I left the region of the backwards Chicago River, I came to Boston for college. Boston has been so shaped by the water around it that there's a time when Washington Street was the only way to get into the city. And since then, the Back Bay, the South Bay, Chinatown, Financial District, Seaport District, Thompson Island, Logan Airport, and nearly half of Charlestown were all made by hand out of the waters. The Back Bay, where I first lived in Boston as a student, was created with some serious attention to this cause. Trains arrived dumping 3,500 railroad cars of gravel into the bay every day for 50 years to create the Back Bay. This is true of other cities, but perhaps Boston most of all, Boston is made up. The laws, the policies, and the police, boundaries and borders, its zoning and transit and parks, and certainly its shorelines were all imagined by people, and they were made by hand, the good and the bad of it. None of it is natural, and none of it was inevitable. These are the three stories of my homes. Along a river that flows over an ancient lake, near the river that flows backwards, and sitting on top of a river filled with gravel. This year, 2021, has been a year of water. Massachusetts had our wettest July in history, while at the same time, 90% of the West is facing severe drought, adding to record-breaking wildfires. Our country is drowning and burning at the same time. None of it is natural, and none of it was inevitable. It doesn't have to be like this. The lesson of rivers, the lesson of handmade homes should remind us to imagine a world different than the one we inherited. Even the things that seem most permanent are constantly in motion. This year has been dramatically different than the one before for many of us, and we can only guess that next year will be different from this. The pandemic, like increasing hurricanes and increasing droughts and increasing fires, is a reminder of our terrifying but beautiful interdependence, that we can't draw lines in the natural world and call them borders and pretend that we don't have an effect on each other. We can't poison the air and the water and overheat the planet and hope that clever engineering will send the problem downstream to somebody else. We are bound up together. We all live downstream from each other. But things as they are not as they were. And what is not what will be. We know that what is obvious today was unimaginable yesterday. And the rivers remind us that change is possible, and change is inevitable, and change is constant. And so let's change this world and create something beautiful together. Let's imagine something beautiful and send it downstream to future generations. Let's envision an interconnected world that is loving and just and healthy. Let's imagine a more beautiful home together. Let's imagine more equity and make it by hand. Let's imagine a world without made-up borders and make it real. And let's imagine cities and civilizations that thrive along the waterways that bind us. Let us do unto those downstream as you would have those upstream do unto you. I invite you to join me. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. Here we go. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. Finding my way, 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 finding my way back home. Keep going like you mean it. Here we go. Oh, river, I hear you, feel you calling me. Oh, river, who will I be when I reach the sea? One more time, here we go. Oh, river, I hear you, feel you calling me. Oh, river, who will I be when I reach the sea? Sound good? Let's continue in song.
This closing song is More Waters Rising, written by a climate justice activist, Sarah Lynch Thomason. And this song, like the best music, I think, and perhaps like the best faith communities, calls us not to turn away from difficult things, not to ignore the crises of our time, but to look at them directly, to name them honestly, and then to move forward to address them together. It goes like this. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Let's try that. There are more waters rising. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. All right, I invite you to rise in body or spirit. It helps with the singing. There are more fires burning. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more fires burning, they will find their way to me. There are more fires burning, this I know, this I know. There are more fires burning, this I know. There are more mountains falling. There are more mountains falling, this I know, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. There are more mountains falling, they will find their way to me. There are more mountains falling, this I know, this I know. There are more mountains falling, this I know. I will wade through the waters. I will wade through the waters when they find their way to me. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will wade through the waters when they find their way to me. I will wade through the waters, this I know, this I know. I will wade through the waters, this I know. I will walk through the fire. I will walk through the fires, this I know, this I know. I will walk through the fires, this I know. I will walk through the fires when they find their way to me. I will walk through the fires, this I know, as I know. I will walk through the fire, this I know. I will rebuild the mountain. I will rebuild the mountain, this I know, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains when they find their way to me. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know, this I know. I will rebuild the mountains, this I know. There are more waters rising. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. There are more waters rising, they will find their way to me. There are more waters rising, this I know, this I know. There are more waters rising, this I know. Beautiful. Let's take another breath together.
Beloveds, let's imagine something beautiful and send it downstream together. Let's imagine a world of justice and equity and compassion and make it by hand together. Let's remember to do unto those downstream as we would have those upstream do to us, because we are all downstream from one another. Go in peace, go in love, and go and be blessed as you are each a blessing to each other. Amen.